In a minute,
Mm,
you will
somebody
be
is
on
saying
live
that
on
event
YouTube.
is locked. We need to probably enter other people who might be coming in. So just be, Jay, if you see anything of that sort, in
No,
just
no,
do that.
there is
It's
no
not
one on the
there.
waiting room.
Okay.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking your time to join this very interesting topic, which is health disruption in healthcare and education. I think it's a very prominent topic, but before we jump on this, I would like to thank each one of you, for supporting and giving us a lot of blessings while we are taking the vaccination drive. So it was a very coordinated effort under the guidance of our chairman, C. Anish Mehta, and support of each and every EXCOM member, Sundar Nurani Saab, our vice chairman, Harikishan Rankawat, our treasurer, CM Manoj Agrawal, who have been done a meticulous planning in that relation, Sheetal Soni, who've been there throughout all the drives, Jayaprakash Agrawal, Rajiv Hira, have been there wonderfully. And while Sangeeta Nahar is also supporting us from India, she's out of town for a while. So everybody have been very supportive, and that's the reason we have been able to give the vaccination to over 4,000 people. And when we say about 4,000 people, it's such a great feeling. It's a feeling of fulfillment. Uh, Incredible effort have been gone into that. And yesterday, I and Manoj have done our PCR test, and fortunately, with all your blessings, we tested negative. So despite of me meeting 4,000 people, it's nothing but a miracle. I'd say that it's all your blessings. Once you come and pass by things, you gave, like, a tap on our shoulder, or probably you put our hands on our head. And this is the blessing. This is the magic of your blessing, that we managed to sustain through entire period. So that have been so kind of you always, and keep your blessings. So this topic of disruption, when we talk about education and healthcare, and we talk about the positive disruption, it always offers guidance on how digital technology can be used to improve the life of people in developing countries, while keeping a careful eye on the limitation and risk of focusing solely on hardware or the people in process. So effectively, what we see the risk in this entire disruption model, people say that, look, technology will gonna come in and it will gonna take a lot of employment away. But that's not the fact. We have seen that over the years, over the decades that we have seen since the computerization thing happens, the jobs rather have been created more and the functions have been changed. So technology is not a silver bullet, and history littered with the poor investment in this area. To ensure the health and education services are effective, efficient, and equitable, the governments need to wise with their choices. As you see in the Union Budget 2021, what the entire government focus is on healthcare and on education. The honorable finance minister talked on some of the critical area that about education and health. This was the talk, majorly the talk of the entire budget. So the time for these strategy decision is now. The waiting with the risk further lost opportunities, lives further enriched in inequality. Many reports and many statistics have witnessed and identified that the organizations, the entrepreneurs and industries which is lacking behind in the era of disruption with technology will be, over a period of time, will disappear. So it's important for all of us to keep a focus on disruption and how can we leverage technology for a better advantage. So I would like to thank our executive committee member, Shia Seetal Soni, for organizing this event. And I would like to place thanks to Sasha Winter, Chief Executive Officer, Matt Group LLC, for accepting our invite and be here to share his expertise with us. Mr. Pankaj Sindhu, founder and director of Bonrex. Thank you, Pankaj for being here and accepting our invite. And Mr. Raman Thiagarajan, founder, investor, social entrepreneur, and ex-partner, McKinsey. Thank you for being here with us and accepting our invite. Without a further ado, I would like to ask our Vice Chairman, CA Sundar Nurani, to say chairman's address and share his word of wisdom with all our members, as our chairman, C. Anish Mehta, is out of town in India. And today, because of certain personal reason, he could not be with us here. He's pretty much asked us to ensure that the continue to continue. So without a further ado, over to you, C.A. Sundar Nurani, Vice Chairman, ICI Dubai Chapter.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Anurag. Good evening to all of you. Sorry, I was finding it difficult to unmute. Thank you, Jai, for that. In fact, I don't want to steal the thunder from all the speakers because we need to hear a lot from them. The message is, if you don't disrupt, you will, get disrupted. That is the message. Although we are focusing on education sector and health sector today, almost all the sectors there is disruption, including the small thing. People are not going to grocery. People are not going to malls nowadays. I mean, of course, people do travel with the precautions and all. But almost all the sectors got disturbed. Look at our chapter. Last year, since March 2020, I think after 5th March, Anurag, we didn't have any physical events. With the help of Zoom and technology, we still continued our education. We got excellent speakers throughout the world. And now today we have such a winter. Pankaj Sindhu and Raman Tyagarajan. Raman is not here with us. He will be joining after a couple of minutes. They are going to share a lot of things about how the digitalization is going to disrupt the education and the medical sector. Thanks, Sheetal. He did an excellent job by bringing the top speakers who are going to enlighten us with their thoughts. What we need to learn from all the speakers is what we can do differently, to learn from them how they are using technology, because any kind of spark which we get from the speakers, probably this might any of the attendees might become the next Amazon or anything like that. So let us learn from them, and we have very good attendance of from this focus group. Without further ado, I would like to again invite Anurag to take the proceedings further. Have a very good learning session. Thank you, Anurag.
Thank you very much, Sundar Saab, for your word of wisdom. Always so great to hear you always. Now I would like to ask our treasurer, a dynamic treasurer, C.A. Harikishan Rankawat, who is smiling, and to introduce our first speaker of the day. So over to you, C.A. Harikishan Rankawat ji.
Hi, good evening, fellow members and speakers. It's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the day, Sasha Winter, who is currently working as CEO of Med Group LLC. Mr. Winter has worked in a range of industries across Europe and the Middle East, from GE, Audi, and NATO, to taking on an entrepreneurial route with self-started businesses. Over the past 5 years, Mr. Winter has built a healthcare consultancy firm that is working on the solution for medical supply chain challenges. It is offering an online B2B marketplace for trusted hospitals and medical manufacturers. He has also teamed up with MasterCard, Visa, and several international banks. MedPay provides a B2B payment gateway that pays supplier instantly. His company also offers several entities in its portfolio, such as MedLease, that allows hospitals to upgrade to the latest equipment, and MedConsult, which simplifies healthcare administration process. Mr. Winter holds a degree in wholesale and foreign trade from Germany and an MBA from the Geneva Business School. He is also a Toastmaster, so his track record also includes a strong talent for delivering top-level presentations, understanding complex products and processes, and delivering key messages to various audiences. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sasha Winter to let us know how B2B e-commerce will disrupt the healthcare industry. Over to you, Mr. Winter. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Harikishan. That was one of the best introductions I've actually ever seen in my career. So I would like to hire you as a constant introducer for anyone who is going to listen to me in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. We are inefficient, and we're wasting money, lots of money on a daily basis. Those were the words that I have been told by a chief financial officer complaining to me about the almost, I would say, insurmountable task he took on to reduce costs and increase efficiencies. The reason why I'm telling you this is that I can imagine that deep inside of some of you, you might be thinking the same. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Sascha Winter. I am the CEO of Medgroup Solution LLC. And it is indeed a true honor to speak here in front of all of you, veterans in their respective industries. And I'm very much looking forward to having a fruitful discussion after my presentation. And again, a special thanks to Sheetal Soni for inviting me to this distinguished panel here. So today I want to talk about exactly what it is to be more efficient, what it is to go with the flow and find new ways using data, using instruments that are optimizing your supply chain automatically on solutions you thought you would not need. Take this, for example. That is what we are all used to it by now. We are now ordering our food, our groceries. Well, even here in Dubai, you can even order your fuel through an app linked with a credit card. You don't even have to get up from your couch anymore. I believe if there would be a fitness app on your phone that would promise you to get fit and lose weight while remaining on that couch, I think there would be an awful lot of people who would sign up and would not want to go to the gym anymore. So jokes aside, what I'm saying is that we're all used to it by now. We use it as a private consumer, but we do not necessarily think of it, how to fully integrate that sort of technology, online solutions into our professional life. I believe that we are rather stuck with the old ways. And by that, I mean, in our industry, sending out an RFQ, waiting for the quotes to come in, analyzing those quotes, negotiating with the supplier, filling out purchase order. Let me give you an example of how not to do it. I was once hired as an external consultant in a clinic group here in the UAE. Of course, I'm not mentioning the name. Their purchase process runs as follows, and I ask you to be a little bit patient and lenient with me when I explain that to you, but there is a particular reason why I am going to explain that to you in detail. So a department in that clinic fills out a so-called PRF, that is short for purchase request form. In there, the department needs to detail their requirements, product, quantity, certification, consistency, and so on. So this form is then being signed by the department head before it goes to the procurement department. Now, these guys are contacting their suppliers with an RFQ. And as we all know, you don't get a quotation right away. Depending on the nature of that product, it may take a few days or even a week. Now, if the requested product is, let's say, an equipment, I don't know, an X-ray machine, CAT scanner, that quotation, once received, will then have to go to the technical department so that these guys can determine that this is the right product. Because in the end, a procurement officer does not know exactly the technical idioms. Are you still with me? Good. I'm almost done.
Yes.
Now comes the financial team in play that needs to evaluate this quotation to ensure that what they are supposed to pay is the best price on the market. Now, before this document then goes back to the department with the official approval, which, by the way, has to contain, and I'm not kidding, 4 different signatures, wet ink signatures on that document before a purchase order can be sent. In that case, all of the documents are being scanned, PDF'd, and sent to the supplier by email. I think I need a sip of water now. 1 second. Now, in this day and age, this is a grotesque waste of time and resources. And what I have just told you costs this clinic hundreds of thousands of dirhams every single year. Why? Because this is how they do it for ages. I believe that highly automated supply chains generate tremendous volumes of data every day, which can be then fed into the system, such as an ERP, for example. The digital transformation is about more than automation. It is about using data to change, in some cases, even changing the existing process and practices. But there's one thing for certain, it will reduce costs. Now, in my industry, I would say just about a year ago, we were on the verge of a collapsing supply chain. The pandemic started to become a harsh reality for all of us. One of the largest medical distributors here in the region has filed for bankruptcy. These guys, as far as I remember, had a market share of about 23%. I'm also not naming which one, but I'm sure that some of you know what company I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, we all were confronted with where to get medical PPEs, for instance. Now, thanks to an automated supply chain, we and many of our competitors, other companies, were able to interpret data from our AI system. We were able to shift global supplies to several regions in the market and so contributed to an equal distribution of those goods. Again, like I said, our competitors also did a fantastic job. So kudos where kudos is due. However, all of us also have faced several fraudulent individuals or companies, fortune seekers that were out to make a quick profit, where a 3-ply mask all of a sudden was offered in the range of, I think, 2 to 3 dirhams, whereas before the pandemic, the price of such a mask was 15 fils. Now, falling back on those automatisms, it has helped us, falling back on those data has helped us to give us the upper hand, and here a hand to help. Ladies and gentlemen, the 20, 30-year-old professionals of today in your very company, they might not be on your radar at the moment, but these guys, they grew up with that stuff. These guys are calling the shots of tomorrow. They easily adapt to those models, data interpretation, AI, automation, and so forth and so forth. Do you honestly and truly believe that they will issue a purchase order the old-fashioned way, where they have to scan it with 4 different signatures? No. They want to ensure a smooth and easy way of purchasing things, just the way we all came to use to it by now in our private life, paying with Apple Pay or credit card. Of course, I am aware that a hospital or any other large entity or enterprise does not order supplies worth, let's say, 50,000 dirhams online, and then they're paying with a credit card. But open your eyes and step ahead of what's out there. There are so many solutions that will help you to reduce your time spent on old-fashioned tasks. Solutions that will help you reducing your overheads. That I can guarantee you. Wow, I just realized that I sounded a bit like Donald Trump. That I can guarantee you, believe me. Let's not talk about politics, I'm sorry. Anyways, what I'm saying is, what you've decided for yourself as a private person, meaning ordering your daily needs online, which you must find positive, or else you would have not done it, apply the same way of thinking in your business life as well. Let me tell you an anecdote. A couple of years ago, I did a customer experience workshop for Mercedes-Benz here in Dubai. Amongst my audience were senior staff from several dealerships here in the region. I have started my presentation with, show your hands if you don't like those telemenus when you call your telecom provider, your insurance, your electricity provider, when it says press 1 for, press 2 for, press 3 for. So you have to go through the whole menu, right? I mean, in the end, we all know it does not qualify your call, because in the end, once you talk to a real person, you have to tell your whole story anyways. So I've asked, show hands, and guess what? All of them have lifted their hands. Everybody was annoyed by that. Then I said, so you agree with me that this is very, very annoying? Yes, all of them agreed with me. And then I said, okay, now show your hands of those who have such a system in place in their own company. And guess what? Yes, exactly. All of them had risen their hands. What I'm trying to bring across here is, Look at ways to simplify your supply chain, shackle off processes that are burdensome, and apply technology, AI, software, access to e-commerce platforms that will give you the upper hand, because times are changing, and times are changing very, very fast at the moment. I mean, I remember almost a little bit over a year ago, it was literally not vogue or chic to have video conferences. A lot of people were saying, we don't need video conferences, you know, and all of a sudden it became a standard practice in our daily lives. Coming back to that, there are so many providers out there with solutions that connects your warehouse management system, your procurement system, your ERP, with your CRM software, even with your accounting tool, with your internal mailing system. It does not matter if all of those are coming from different sources. Don't fall into that trap of looking into a single island solution, as most of the companies do, and try to look at the bigger scene here. Go out, virtually speaking, and look out for supply chain solutions that may or may not cost a bit of a fortune. But you're the professionals here, and with your background, you know how to estimate costs against benefits and savings. The time, and especially here in the region where customers can squeeze suppliers over and over for 2 or 3% more discount, where they're paying a little bit later than the payment terms, where the manager is not here to sign the check, that will eventually backfire. In my company, for example, we are actively stepping away from clients that are frequently playing this sort of game, as the time and effort spent is definitely not worth the outcome. I would like to end my first part of that presentation here, because I would now like to be open for your questions. Maybe you have already some questions. So therefore, it would be great to get some of your feedback already. So I'm open for questions now.
Sasha, just before we open the forum for the question, let me ask you one quick question. See, I always, whenever we meet a lot of our clients, you know, and especially in technology, and one of our executive committee members, Jay, is also into healthcare and especially in technology. Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Many times what happens when we visit the client and they ask us, like, you know, for example, go and suggest us some of the solutions. Jay, I'll just take you into this here as well. I'll just add you so that, you know, you can just... So I've taken, and I'll add Sheetal also here. So if when we go to the client and let's say we are working for them, often, like, you know, people like vendors, like from your organization, they'll come and they say, look, technology will gonna change the way you work, right? It's gonna change the way you work and it will gonna efficient, make everything easy. But 99.9% it doesn't happen the way they say. So what's your thought on that, basically? How do you see that this entire solution and mechanism is really work? I mean, I'll give you an example. I was sitting with the CEO. He says, look, I deal into a products. My business is robust, very successful, no problem at all. Can you help me out making an ideal product mix which can generate me the best profit? Ideal product mix, which people buy. I introduce him to 3 different technology players. 3 different technology players who talks about RPA, AI, robotics and all. But ultimately what they went down sitting, you tell me how we shall do it. So when we talk about supply chain, how do you say that, look, you are an expert. You will not go to the business saying that you tell me what I need to do and I'll go into the system and program it and fix it. Do you have some mechanism? Jay, please add me on something on that if you wish to.
I'll first give chance to Mr. Sasa to say his part, and then I'll add on what exactly I have experienced in past. Sir, please go ahead.
Okay, so me, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
First.
Right. Okay. Anurag, this is it is something I came across very often as well. And the thing is, especially, and I worked as a consultant, and the problem always is that we are obviously always looking at a machinery with a lot of moving parts. And it has been identified that this one particular area in that machinery needs, let's say, improvement. It needs, let's say, something to be optimized in this case. However, if you, and I assume that you are looking at the bigger picture, but unfortunately, indeed, that your clients, they just want to have a quick fix solution. Yeah, they want to have, let's say, what we call an island solution without looking at the bigger picture. Because of course, when you look at the bigger picture, you have to increase your man hours because you have to understand the complexity of the entire system in this case. It is indeed quite difficult. However, what I have done, for instance, in order to also convince my client, look, I'm not here to make an awful lot of money out of you. I would like to, let's say, look at the bigger picture, but under normal circumstances, it would cost you more, but I'm not here to charge you for that. I just need to understand what the entire machinery actually needs to do in this case. My experience, what I usually have done is, yes, they have hired us for, let's say, a small issue, but I've told them, yeah, we can fix the small issue, but I can guarantee you the outcome will not be as what you would think. I want to look at the bigger picture. I need more time. And when I said more time, immediately my client said, yeah, but then you also want more money. I said, well, under normal circumstances, yes, but my obligation towards you in order to fix this problem is to fix the problem, and in a very, let's say, long-lasting way. I am not going to charge you for when I have to look at the bigger picture. That is my investment into that relationship. I just charge you for what you are hiring me to do. However, if you want me to do that in a long-lasting effect, then I need to look at the bigger picture. I'm not charging for that, but the only thing I'm asking you to be, let's say, a bit more patient because it will take some more time. What my experience then was that they were pretty much open-minded to that idea. And what happened afterwards is that most of the time, I would say 60 to 70%, I had follow-up businesses out of that particular client because they knew immediately that I'm not looking at the, let's say, immediate cash income. I'm looking at the long-lasting relationship. That is what we call trust building in this case. So that means I am on the receiving end sometimes myself. I am hiring external consultants and I can literally sniff out in the meantime when someone is there just to make a quick buck. But if someone is there who has an interest in forming a relationship with me, I can guarantee you, Anurag, that I will hire this person or this company more often because then I have a much better feeling. And that is, sometimes it doesn't work with companies. They just want to have a quick fix. They're not interested in forming a relationship. Then it is basically up to you if you want to, step away from that client or if you just want to make some bucks out of it. But in the end of the day, I think we've done much, much better in forming a trustworthy relationship in the long term.
Perfect. I agree with you, sir. I'll give you two analogy. What I do it with, based on my experience, if I have to go from ground floor to second floor, you have to take the stairs, right? And you cannot jump to second floor. Stairs is basically sequential. You have to do it. If you want to go fast, you may go for an escalator, right? But escalator will come at a cost. You have to put in that price. So from going from ground floor to second floor, go sequentially. Either take that or take the elevator. That will cost you. You have to put in money, but you may be able to achieve it. That means go sequence. You cannot achieve in one day or 1 year. You have to have the goal and you have to give the time for that. Second, if I want to have the child tomorrow, it's not like today I plan, tomorrow I will have child in my hand. No, it takes a process. 9 months is required to bring the child. Why 9 months is required? Because that's the evolution, right? Similarly, for technology to adapt, we have to give that time frame. It cannot be done in a month. If you are standing at one location and if you want to reach some other destination of tier 4 company or tier 1 from tier 4 to tier 1 company, you have to give that time frame. It has its natural process. So for me, sequence, and along with that, the required time has to be given to reach there, which because of the cost, because always cost comes into the picture, and that is the reason the client fails to achieve what they want to achieve. Educate time and go sequentially, achieve smaller goals, one stair at a time, and then reach the destination. That is my take on it.
100%. I couldn't say it better.
Thank you, Jay, for explaining it in much better fashion as well. Sasha, you talked about mobile and we ordering a lot of things with such an ease these days, and that's all happening at a B2C level, right? So how do you see the same kind of ease happening at B2B level? I mean, I would not assume, I would not probably tend to believe that people sitting at hospitals would be ordering this and paying it by credit card for that matter.
No, of course not. This is actually, thanks, Chital, for the question. This is actually something I've been asked many, many times, especially when we are talking to hospitals and their CFOs, CMOs, COOs, and so forth and so forth. Of course, you just cannot come up with a fantastic idea and then everything falls apart because you cannot deliver, because the substantial foundation of what you're trying to bring across, if that is not being supported by, let's say, mechanisms, then you're making a fool out of yourself. When you look at, for instance, we were indeed looking at the same situation as well. And there are so many companies out there, for instance, supply chain finance companies, banks even. We have spoken to Citibank, for instance. We have spoken to HSBC. We have spoken to Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank. There are certain banks out there. They are saying, this is actually interesting because then we can participate in this whole supply chain financing system, something we haven't really done before, number one. Number two, we have also spoken to credit card providers such as MasterCard and Visa. And both of them were very interested to participate in that as well. Of course, that is a different sort of credit card. The facility is pretty much the same. The idea behind it is the same. Of course, they provide, let's say, a virtual B2B credit card that is only applicable for that sort of transaction. That means the interest rate is much, much lower than the credit card in your pocket. The repayment terms are more lenient than the one we have in our wallet. So here we're talking about a payback term of 90 days with 0.75% interest rate. So all of a sudden, that opens up, let's say, opportunities for even people in the B2B sector to say, well, we could order that equipment, that material, those consumables, and we can technically use that particular credit card facility in the same manner as we use the credit card in our wallet. Number one. Number two, the portal we are operating, for instance, also opens up for certain lenders in this. Well, that can be a bank, that can be a credit card facility, a supply chain financing company, that can be even a private investor, for instance, who says, you know what, I have $100,000 lying around, I don't know what to do with this. So they can chip into this particular fund, some sort of crowdsourcing, crowd financing, if you will. And then, you know, they will basically also make their profit out of that. So that also means that we have indeed established a payment system where suppliers, and this is one of the incentives we are offering, as well as others as well, is where suppliers are being paid immediately after the delivery. So this is their incentive to sell online their products through customers. Whereas for the end customer, nothing much has changed. They're getting their goods and they pay after 30, 60, and 90 days.
Interesting. Thank you, Sasha. Bhavna, you also have a question, right? So please go ahead.
Sasha, I had a question. You just mentioned about that portal. So it's very clear now, because initially I was thinking as to how you are, trying to tie this up all together. And I wanted to ask you, as regards the supply chain, there are instances where blockchain applications have been tried. So have you also thought of that as, a technology to be used in this case? Because there are a lot of challenges there.
Yeah, 100%, Bhavna. And I'm also happy that you're asking me that question, because it is indeed, it opens up an enormous amount of opportunities out there. However, unfortunately, everybody knows about blockchain, but not a lot of people are actually applying this knowledge to what it really is. A lot of people are seeing at the moment the rate of the like cryptocurrency, for instance, has gone up, but there's a lot of knowledge out there, but not really a lot of application for it. Yes, we are in the, let's say, process of establishing that as well. However, we have to overcome certain regional hurdles, because not in every region in the world you are allowed to apply that sort of system or that sort of product in that case, out of various reasons. We have experienced a much bigger let's say, acceptance of that in North America, for instance, even in Europe as some sort of test. But when it comes to, let's say, when it comes to Middle East, Southeast Asia, for instance, we are very, very, let's say, often and very fast. We are, let's say, coming to a blockade in this case. So yes, to answer your question, we have looked into it. We are still looking into it. We have not applied it yet fully. We're still in the testing purpose of that, because we see actually quite a lot of promising opportunities and applications in there, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. I think you still have some more points to talk about. So please go ahead, and then probably we'll have another session on the Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like also to open, like again, to keep the panel open for questions, because I would also like to see, for instance, what your experience is, whether or not you are in the healthcare industry or in any other industry, about the application of those supply chain methods, for instance. All I can say is, and this is something I come across very, very often, is that there are a lot of people, they are really seem to be stuck in their old ways. I actually came across a particular graphic, and I'm sure that a lot of people of you have seen that as well, is when I look at this one, for instance. So here, that is definitely something, you know, what I came across as well personally myself when I deal with, let's say, certain clients, that yeah, they find the idea very, very appealing, and they would like to learn more about that, and so forth and so forth. But all of a sudden, they realize it comes with effort, it comes with time that need to invest, it comes with money that needs to be invested. So unfortunately, what I came across very often is the short-sightedness of some of our clients in this case, where they were saying, we don't really see the bigger picture. We would rather stick, you know, and see what's 5 meters ahead of us, and not see the bigger picture, what the end result is. Again, what I said earlier in my presentation, look at your own company when you have 10, 15, 20 people or more, and look at these guys. Like I said, they are 20 or 30-year-old today. They have a complete different mindset than all of us.
No,
like
Sasha,
I said,
I agree. I agree with your mindset that, you know, this is a picture is very useful, but there are people. I'll give you my personal example.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a tax professional, but before tax, I used to be a technology guy. A real technology. I played with the technology in and out way altogether, right? So when it comes to my own business, people say, look, every day we receive an email, look, you know, your website, we can fix it. Your digital marketing, we can fix it, right? Every day you must be receiving, and everybody, all of us receive. So I said, okay, I asked one of the guy, look, you know, your website is fine. I said, very good. Very good. Can you please fix it so that it becomes number one? Every single thing becomes rosy. He says, I'll charge you 10,000 dirhams. I said, given. 10,000 dirhams is given for website. I given him 10,000. How much month it will take? He says 2 months. I said, okay. Don't ask me anything. I said, my industry is this consulting, and I given him all the references of top organization that I have worked with. He says, perfectly all right. After that, he started coming back to me. Look, how this should look like, how this should look like. Shall I do this? Shall I do? I said, why I'm paying you 10,000 dirhams? Why I'm paying you for that amount? So often in 99.9% cases, when you go and show a demo, okay, look, I can convert this entire thing. I can change the entire way you work. I'll bring efficiency, adaptability and all. But at the end, what has happened, once you go to the business, you tell me how you want to see it. No. As an expert, how many organizations you've been there, you say, look, I will tell you how your business shall run. I'm an expert into technology. I know your process is inefficient, and I will come and correct that process. How many of those cases have you done? So if you touch base a slight on that example, let's say, for example, any of the major case that you've done where you turn around, a little bit touch base on that, it will help our people and help our members to really understand that how this entire dynamics was. Because see, talks are bigger. We all talk.
Oh yeah.
But practical sense, for example, blockchain, people talk. I personally do not have an organization known to me, be it a bank or be it anybody, who has actually done it until now. I'm on blockchain. They say, look, we are implementing, but have you implemented? That's where the practice.
This is and this is also what I actually also forgot to say earlier when I got this question. Like I said, it seems to be very en vogue at the moment to talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency, all of these things. But like I said, a lot of people, they don't know exactly what it all means. But coming back to your example, Anurag, you are right. I'm getting an awful lot of spam emails, and we can make you more efficient in this way and this way and this way. The thing is, don't wait for those advertisements to come, or just cut through the noise and just ignore it and decide for yourself. For instance, I mean, in your case, you are a financial expert with a technical background. Okay, that makes you, in my case, a bit of a unicorn as well. Yeah, but there is an awful lot of people, they have neither. Yeah, so that means you have to adjust, or you have to decide for yourself whether or not you believe that your processes are, let's say, inefficient. Number one, the moment when you accept that as a fact. For instance, I give you a better example. You as a human being, yeah, for instance, you realize that you have some back pain, yeah, and it bothers you. It starts a little and it becomes more and more and more. Of course, you start at one point noticing it, and then you think, you know what, I have to do something to fix it, because I don't want to do this for the next 10, 15 years before it becomes worse. So the moment you realize that, you have to be open-minded. The moment you realize you have a back pain, then you go to the doctor and, to get it fixed. You probably go to a second or a third doctor to see, what fits better. What is the doctor saying? Do you need some injection, or do you need some physiotherapy, for instance? And then you can see what works best. So now apply this to your business level. So you are looking, and this is the difficult part, because all of us, we are getting carried away by the daily tasks we are facing every day. So sometimes it's very easy to forget the little back pain in your company. So therefore, step back and have a look at the bigger picture. Look at it on a regular basis, and you will see there is probably some issues in your company. So the moment you start to realize and accept it as a fact that there is something in your company that needs to be fixed, then go out and look for the experts. Don't wait for them to come to you, because there's like you said, and you like to use the term very often, 99.9% is rubbish. Yeah, they're promising you everything you want to hear. You do your own research. You are educating yourself. You can take it as long or as far as possible, so that when you talk to an expert, that they cannot overtalk you, that they cannot explain, or that they cannot promise you all of that. You have to look into that yourself, even though you're not an expert. Take, when we go back to that a blockchain, for instance. So you have heard of it, blockchain. Okay, that sounds interesting. What is it exactly? I did some research. I did some reading and so forth and so forth. I have a fairly good idea what it is. Can I apply that to my company now? Probably not now, but probably in the near future. But I started already talking to particular experts, to see what they can bring to the table. So, and this is what I would say for you as well. The moment you start realizing that there is an issue you would like to get fixed, educate yourself first, so that you have a little bit of a basic foundation understanding, and then talk to those experts and see what is the better fit, the same way as you would do with a doctor.
Thank you, Sasha. Tell me one thing, why would most of the sellers, in the medical industry, be it equipment manufacturers or consumable manufacturers, they do have their own, many of them have their own web shops. Why would they need somebody in between, to make their life one more layered, in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of companies, they have already seen that oh yeah, e-commerce is the next big thing, and we have to be in the same level, and we have to, let's say, step into this and sell more stuff online, giving us more exposure to clients, for instance. I get that. I had a very interesting conversation with a supplier, a manufacturer, as a matter of fact, at the Arab Health. And while I've explained to him about our portal, for instance, where they can upload their products, they can sell it online and so forth, he was saying exactly the same thing. He said, no, we have a web shop already, and it works very well. And I said, fantastic. And I will definitely check your web shop, as from a customer experience, for instance, and so forth and so forth. And then I've asked him, by the way, are you living in Dubai? And he goes, no, I flew in here for the exhibition. I said, okay, how did you book your hotel? And he said, well, my colleague did it. Okay, how did she book the hotel? Yeah, well, they went to booking.com and, booked the hotel. I said, okay, so why did you use booking.com? Well, so that we can compare hotels with the best rate and everything. And I said, yeah, but I'm sure the hotel you're staying, they also have a booking engine on their website. So why didn't you go there? And then he looked at me and I said, so you see where I'm going with this, yeah? There is a reason why there is the likings of booking.com and TripAdvisor and Expedia and all of these things, to have a bit more exposure, to have, let's say, to give the end customer an opportunity to compare. Yeah, so for instance, on our platform, there are so many medical manufacturers. Someone who is looking for a syringe, for instance, they are not going to each and every web shop there is. They want to have a platform where they can immediately compare. And this is the reason why we're offering that. Of course, there are still manufacturers out there. They're saying, no, we don't want to do that. We sell only through our own platform. That's absolutely fine. But we have actually noticed that hospitals, for instance, they are going on, let's say, platforms such as us, and we're not the only one, more often than going directly to these so-called web shops from the manufacturers themselves.
Thank you, Sasha. I think we have a question from Prasanna. 1 second.
Oh, is this for me?
Yes.
Nice.
Anurag, there is one question from Mr. Prasanna.
I did not expect that. Thank you.
No. Certificate of appreciation from all of us. So for your time, thank you so much. And
Anurag,
now I'll go back to the question again. So
yeah. Mr. Prasanna, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Winter, actually, I wanted to ask you this, your website orders, which you said, the invoicing will also be done by you, because I guess there is some restriction that the purchases will have to be through the authorized sources only, meaning that it is either the Ministry of Health or Departmental of Health, the recognized suppliers. So when it is purchased through you, how do you avoid this sort of restriction?
Yeah, very good question, Mr. Prasanna. Thank you for that. No, we're not the merchant of records. We're basically, like I said, the platform, and then basically company X and company Y, they are coming together, and they can either use our payment gateway, which is either this B2B credit card, or they can use a bank transfer, or we can also provide our platform as an escrow account, if you will, a PayPal, and so forth and so forth. But however, it is important to know that, and this is also with some of the other platforms out there, is that the money does not go through us. Otherwise, I would be a Fortune 500 company within 1 year. If all the money goes, if all the money goes through our account in this case. What we offer is that we have, let's say, certain mechanisms in place where the bank is then the guardian of that money and remains, or the bank keeps the money until the delivery is happened, and then of course releases the money towards this particular supplier, and we are getting then a commission from this particular transaction. So that means we're basically just the referee. The game is being played by the team players.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mrs. Sasha, for all your time, and this conversation can go on and on for quite some time, but
for sure.
We would like to, we have time shortage, so
Bhavna, I will connect you separately with Sasha for your thing. We are short of time right now. That's why.
Sorry, Bhavna.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So without further ado, I would like to ask our dynamic, one of the executive committee members, CA Manoj Agrawal, to introduce our next speaker. CA Manoj Agrawal.
Good evening, everyone. Pankaj Sindhu, a passionate and first generation entrepreneur with 20 years of rich experience in healthcare domain, who took the healthcare entrepreneurship on a new height. Back to back successful and category defining healthcare startups, Pankaj is now churning his third startup, WonderX. So WonderX reminds me, while in Dubai, Wonder was. So it's something unique concept. So WonderX is again a category defining startup working towards digitizing and integrating the scattered healthcare stakeholders while digitally weaving the healthcare journey of the patients, which I think we need in India very much, because only medical stores or pharmacy can read the language of doctors. He brings in the unique ability to identify scalable business models, build performing teams, and lead the business to successful heights by applying unique commercialization methodology. Let us welcome with a big round of applause, Pankaj Sindhu.
Thank you, Manojji, and thanks everyone for being there. Very good evening to all of you. My name is Pankaj Sindhu, and I'm based out of Mumbai as of now. So I'll just quickly set the context for my topic, and we'll take certain questions in between. So what I'm going to be speaking about is, and given India is a big, huge economy which is coming up with great surgeons in the startup ecosystem, I'll be talking about how the stage is set for a next unicorn in healthcare from India. And healthcare, everybody knows, with the corona stuff, COVID stuff and all, this is one of the main prime stuff which is going on. Now, I'll not get into too many details on the stats which are available on Google. You guys can always Google it out. I'll just specifically focus on one specific area and maybe evaluate and highlight a few more for your understanding. This is going to help you with understanding what's happening in India, what are the great opportunities, and in case any one of you intends to take up startup investments as your part-time, full-time, or hobby, that might help you as well. And also in a lot of other areas in the emerging and booming healthcare startup. So from a stats perspective, Indian economy from a healthcare perspective is projected to be around $372 billion by around 2022.
Pankaj, sorry, I'm interrupting. Do you want us to ask and jump in as and when you are speaking? Okay, so all of you can flag your hands whenever you feel to ask anything to Pankaj. Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely fine. So on the stats part, I'll get into very specific, which are going to be around the big opportunity, which I feel is still vacant, and it needs to be captured by someone. Let's see who becomes the healthcare leader on that. If you look at the numbers, population, everybody's aware about. We are around 1.3 billion population, humongous, producing every few seconds quite tons of people. We've got around 1.1 million doctors in India. Now, this 1.1 million doctors are handwriting a prescription, all of them. I've gone to the big of the hospitals, and still even the likes of the biggies, corporate hospitals, not to name any of them, while they have sophisticated systems and all, in OPD, which is the outpatient department where doctors usually would see the patient, they're still handwriting, and somebody else is maybe doing the typing part of it as a backend. So if we get into statistics part of it, around 92% of the doctors in India are still handwriting. And handwriting, understanding a handwriting of a doctor is a miracle which only the pharmacist can really take it up.
Nice. Yeah.
Now, this entire handwritten prescription is actually fulfilled by traditional players. And hear me out on that. When I say traditional, these are the pharmacies, the traditional pharmacies, the pathology, the radiology, the dietitians, and very little would be in the hands of the organized players or e-players. And I'm coming to that as well. Now let's look at the pharmacies. We have got around 850,000 pharmacies in this country. All traditional, all of them. They're used to patients walking to their shop, showing a prescription, handwritten prescription. Then some decoder will be there who will understand the handwriting, dispense the medicines, and there you go, pay the cash and take the medicines away. Now this entire market of pharmacy, if you look at 97% of that is still in the hands of these traditional players. Only 3% which has been over a period of time gone into e-pharmacies or the organized players. Mind it, e-pharmacy has been there in India for quite some time, and it is growing like crazy. And this is one of the new big areas like Amazon and all, where a lot of consolidation has started happening. Reliance is getting into it, Walmart is getting into it. A lot of big players are seeing and eyeing this entire opportunity. But still, despite all those efforts, despite so many years, 3% of market share is what pharmacies, e-pharmacies, and organized pharmacies have captured so far. If you look at the diagnostics market, which is another big area, it's around $4 billion market, and we have got somewhere around 25% only in the organized market, which leaves another big chunk of 75% in the unorganized market. Now look at this whole structure. What's happening? There is a patient walking into the clinic, 97, 95, or whatever, 90 plus you might want to say. Doctors are handwriting a prescription, and that physical piece of paper actually goes to the pharmacy, to a pathology, to a diagnostics, or all these different providers, fulfillment ecosystem providers, and it is actually served over there. Now that's how the entire journey of the clinic is. And this physical piece of paper is floating around. Now imagine the demand which this physical piece of paper has. Right? Let's look at the demand quantification part of it. Don't treat it as a small piece of paper. There's a lot of demand inside that. A diabetologist writing a prescription would have almost around $4,000 to $5,000 of medicines, around $5,000 to $6,000 of tests, and a lot of other things which he will be referring you to a probably dietitian and other specialists and super specialists, etc. So there is a huge, humongous amount of transaction happening every day. And there is no data around that. There are no specific stats around that. If you ask me, in Mumbai, how many prescriptions are written, there'll be only a guesswork. Nobody knows about that. There are no statistics like in US. You can very well say because it's being handwritten. And why it is being handwritten? Let's understand that. So before that, I'll give you an analogy. I was once had the opportunity to meet the Australian health minister, and he was saying that, okay, we have got everything automated, and I've been to Dubai quite a few times, a lot of things automated there as well. But he was not happy with the whole, efficiency and various aspects of the automation which has happened. So I said, what are the key reasons that are a challenge in your entire economy from a healthcare perspective? He mentioned two of them. One is that, all the doctors who we have forced to type a prescription, they're not typewriters, they're not typing guys. They find the keys very slowly, and then their productivity goes down. If I was to write a particular prescription, I would have done it faster. I would have turned around a patient faster, and my productivity goes up. Look at it from a doctor's perspective now. Right? A doctor writing a prescription versus typing a prescription, there have been some challenges on that, and not every doctor is so used to the keyboard. The second aspect, which is a challenge from a doctor's perspective, is, let's say he's typing the whole prescription. He's got a laptop or a desktop or tab in front of him. What happens is, while he's talking to you, but his entire eye contact is on the screen. Now imagine you are paying a big chunk of money to a doctor for a consultation. He's not even looking at you, and he's just bothered on what he's entering on the screen, because he wants to make sure that he doesn't make mistakes on the drop down and all, which creates a lot of relationship gap. Now, this is a very valid, important point. Your productivity loss and your relationship gap, because you have automated the entire prescription in the clinic. Because of that, in our country, 90% plus of the doctors have not adopted to this entire typing-based solutions. And then we surveyed this whole thing around. It is around 131 countries still in this entire global economy who are still handwriting a prescription, which means that the problem is not India. Problem is a global problem, and the opportunity is huge. Now let's, yeah.
Pankaj, I mean, from our experience, sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, sure.
But, in UAE, I have seen that, a lot of the time that I visit, the doctor is writing it and typing it at the laptop here. So maybe the demand part is being captured in this region. Maybe some of our healthcare related professionals may throw some light on this as well, particularly from the UAE and the Middle East region perspective.
Yeah, I guess over there, I think it's a lot of insured market. You guys are in that particular market. In India, we are a self-pay market. Whatever is being written or typed, one will have to go out and purchase it on his or her own. So I go to a pharmacy or a pathology and all. And similar kind of.
We all have experienced it in India and still do so.
Course,
yes,
of course.
And that's a huge demand. And are you saying that there is no statistics available on that front? I mean, the demand side of it.
Yeah, demand side, definitely it is. But if you look at the number of prescriptions being written, Right. Yeah, there'll be no particular mechanism because majority of the doctors are writing it. They're not willing to change to a typing, and there are no stats available. And the point is that majority of the transaction starts. Where does the user journey or a patient journey start? With a prescription. He takes the prescription, moves around, spends money here and there, and that takes the majority chunk of it. Now, this is all area which is a huge opportunity. Now, if you ask me, while there is artificial intelligence, there is healthcare, infrastructure and all, there are tons of other opportunities. But I feel that this particular opportunity, whereby the handwritten prescriptions, which carry tremendous amount of demand inside, are not being connected with the outside fulfillment ecosystem efficiently. It is only a footfall going to them, and then only the business would have transacted so far. Now, let's look at the quantum of this. And this is again a pure guesswork. And since you know the Indian environment, a doctor, a GP sees over here between 40 to 100 patients also per day. And he works like 20 to 25 days a month. So considering around 1.1 million doctors over here, and let's be on a conservative side, around 15 prescriptions a day, and around 22 working days in a particular month, in a month, there are almost 363 million prescriptions written. Now, that's a mind-boggling number. And if you just do a yearly calculation on that, there are around 4.5 billion prescriptions being written in this country. Now, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money embedded inside, which is being totally customized to a patient walking with that piece of paper. This is the opportunity which I feel is going to be the new one, whereby how do we capture the handwritten prescriptions, connect them in the entire outside ecosystem, and be able to emerge as the integrated healthcare exchange. Like in US, you would see that a lot of those typed prescriptions will go to a single server. There are 2-3 players out there, few billion-dollar valuations. And then you just walk into a particular pharmacy where you would have your orders placed, covered by insurance and all that. Here, imagine all handwritten prescriptions, because the behavior of a doctor is very difficult to change. You will not be able to force a doctor to start typing. And if that has to come, that will take at least 5 to 6 years. So for next 5 to 6 years, it's going to be a lot of handwritten prescriptions still moving around in this particular country. So prescription demand to fulfillment integration is missing out. Imagine the handwritten prescription is being digitized through some mechanism, and that is connected to a pharmacy, pathology and all. And as Sasha was also mentioning, that the marketplace for these healthcare providers were to come in, wherein a patient who acts like a consumer is able to find the best policy or a best offering for him and all that. So that's the area where I feel is going to be the biggest emerging story from a unicorn perspective, and it's already in action. Quite a few players would have been working on it. Apart from this, as I see, there is a lot of demand on the vaccine side as well, and you know it why. So government here has while budgeted a lot of stuff, 300 million consumers will be vaccinated, but this gives a rise to a new environment of adult vaccination. Now in this country,
Hello. It seems that Pankaj video has stopped.
Yes.
Let me connect with him.
That's also very interesting what he's talking about with the prescription. I haven't really thought of that at all.
In the meantime, if anyone has any question with Sasha, he can go ahead.
I can fill in, yes.
Sasha, the spotlight back on you now.
Yeah, but literally, I can see the sun.
Had a question. The right time.
I'm sure Pankaj will come back.
Ask your question.
I've already asked my question, Jai.
Okay.
I didn't wait for it. I just asked him in the chat.
Sure, no problem. Thanks.
We can, Bhavna, if that is okay with you. But Bhavna, if it is okay with you, we can probably also
Pankaj
share.
Should be rejoining.
We can. Okay,
Yeah.
Pankaj is back, I think.
Okay.
Sorry, I got lost. So I was saying that vaccine is the new big thing which is going to be picking up, and adult vaccination to me is going to be one major area which is going to set the stage for next unicorns amongst the other areas. E-pharmacy, as you guys know, big guys like Reliance, Walmart, and all these guys are entering into it. And definitely the artificial intelligence. Don't know how and where, but definitely AI is going to play a big role in this entire stuff. Now, having said that, while we have got a lot of players in this, there is Practo. If you look at, there are a lot of success stories. It's not that these are just numbers I'm talking about. You look at Practo, you look at Liberate, Pharmeasy, 1mg in the e-pharmacy space. These guys have given like 100x returns to their investors so far, growing like crazy and trying to become the next marketplace for the medicines and all. There is a lot of M-Fine type companies in doctor e-consultation which have emerged. The home healthcare, whereby patients would be able to get healthcare at their home, is emerging up. Companies like Portia, Healthcare at Home, Nightingales are coming up, and they've gone through some crazy valuations. They were like initial few crores, and maybe I would say just a few million. And today they are looking at somewhere around $1 billion valuations, quite a few of them. So there are immense amount of success stories over there. But having said that, all of these players are playing in their niche category, right? E-pharmacy is one category, diagnostics, doctor bookings. These are the three major areas which most of the guys are looking at. This one area of identifying the demand from the prescription is something which is yet to be taken up, in the entire industry. And I was talking to e-pharmacy guys, and what they said, that in the last few years we have captured 3% of the market, and our consumer acquisition costs are now gone so high because on the digital part of it, in the digital world, we are not able to get any further consumers because most of them we have acquired. So in a way, we are saturated in terms of where do we acquire our consumers. So they will also eventually look at clinics, look at prescriptions which are being written by the doctors, and that's also going to be coming as a channel of fulfillment to their end. So these are few areas where everyone is taking up their niche part of it, but there is no leader. There is no clear leader as to emerge, which we can say, like in travel, you will see Make My Trip over here, in taxi, Uber and Ola, similarly Zomato, Swiggy and all in their respective areas. But in healthcare, there is yet a leader to emerge. It's a huge opportunity which is going to be coming up as we move on. So I'll take a break here and maybe just ask some questions if you have any. Else I'll just maybe wrap up by a few more statements.
Sure, Pankaj. It seems to be a huge opportunity, and we have one of our member, Mr. Nirmal. He wants to ask you a question. He's excited with the opportunity already, I see. Yeah. Nirmal, please go ahead and ask your question. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Shrital. Thanks, Pankaj. It's obviously a great opportunity when we talk about India because the numbers are phenomenally high in the country and it's very underserved. I think a couple of things which, if you can at least, since, you spoke about the digitization of prescription, just to understand that, like, if you can give a perspective in terms of how actually this can be done, considering, you have a lot of doctors with a traditional mentality. And in India, doctors have been like, they always have their own egos, and you have a lot of these kind of issues when you typically deal in healthcare actually. So how can this actually be practically implemented, if you can give some context on that? Sure. And second is, what's your take on the digital therapeutics? I mean, that's one of the areas which has been coming up very well globally. In India, okay, a lot of companies have been trying to do something, but just wanted to understand from the perspective of, let's say, the consumers actually, that how this is getting kind of received actually, just to understand, since you've been very close to the sector.
Sure. No, thanks a lot, Nirmal. On the first part, what I'll say is, how do we really capture the whole thing? I don't want to get into my product, but that's exactly where we are also heading into. So what we have done is, and what anybody can also do is, the liking of the doctor to the paper is humongous, and he would not want to leave that handwriting behavior. So there is a technology, which has been worked out from our end, whereby we give a paper customized to the doctor's need with a digital pen. Whatever he writes on that piece of paper, it gets digitized. And not only it gets digitized, it can even record the voice instructions of the patient inside the clinic. That gives an amazing engagement to the patient. And usually what happens, patient takes the paper, walks out, forgets. 3/4 of the patient forget what was told. A simple instruction that a vitamin D to be taken weekly gets taken every day, and then the patient runs back to the doctor with palpitation and so many complications and all. Now, those instructions are critical and in local language. And not everybody understands English. The prescriptions are written in English. So how do we make sure that those pieces are also taken care of in the entire journey? So the base product remains capturing the handwritten prescription, and then you keep adding toppings on that, like the voice instructions or educational videos, and connecting the patient with the best offers outside, and making consumer the best decider on where he would want to get his test done, which is the best offer, where does he get a discount from e-pharmacy or a local pharmacy and all that. So that's there, that's existing, that's running. Coming to the digital therapeutics piece of it, I would say a lot of mindset has changed in the last 9-10 months. Given the pandemic and all.
Corona, of course,
Yeah. So we used to see the traditional payers not ever adopting and getting onto any kind of from a provider perspective. I'll come to the consumer part. From a provider perspective, we used to speak to earlier pharmacies. He would say, "I'm happy with the patient footfall." They're just used to patient walking to their door. And when e-pharmacy came in, they came up with a very surprise that, okay, business can be done without a patient walking to you. Or even the diagnostics, a business can be done without a patient going to their lab, but you can send a flebo. So this was surprise to them. And with Corona, they were really taken off their seats. So now the mindset has changed. The provider end, they also are looking at very aggressively, because these are small traditional shops. They cannot do their own product. They cannot maintain digital stuff. They're looking at companies who can connect them with the consumer, who can connect them with the demand which is being generated from the prescription. So there is a lot of acceptance on that. On the consumer side also, I see a lot of things coming up, like e-consultation, if you see, have gone up tremendously in the last 9 months. Wellness has taken a lot of upseat on that. There are quite a lot of e-pharmacy stuff which grew during this particular time itself. Not only that, even the groceries were, we got used to getting delivered. So I think that these are spaces which are going to be picking up, and entering the company or a startup at the right time is the key, and it really can give a lot of returns wherever it stands in that particular queue.
And just one more thing here, how do you see the insurance sector kind of getting into essentially the medical insurance probably kind of coming into India actually? I mean, still we all are uninsured actually as far as the country is concerned.
Correct.
But how do you see that going forward actually?
Yeah. Look, insurance, again, huge opportunity. As I said, when we talk, you pick up any sector, Nirmal, and there is so humongous opportunity, whether it is hospitals, whether it is number of doctors to patient, whether it is insurance. So insurance today, if I see around 20% of insurance penetration is there. Okay. Maybe it would have gone up a little bit higher now, but between 20 to 25 or 30%. Now imagine 70% of insurance penetration is still working out. And it's a self-pay market. And we have seen people going bankrupt without insurance, absolutely. Going into, they sell their lands, they sell their gold and whatnot to get things done. So I'm sure that insurance is something which is going to tremendously pick up as well. Now people are experimenting with OPD insurance. Right, Ayushman Bharat is another great initiative, the PMJ, which has recently come up. Amazing stuff happening over there. So a lot of things will come up, and along with all these digitization and all that, there's a lot of fraud and surveillance opportunities also going to come up.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Look at the OPD digitization, and how the insurance claims come up, whether it is real, not real. How do you really make sure that a handwritten prescription is a real one or not a real one? So humongous opportunities are there. You just need to pick the right niche for yourself and move on.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks.
Pankaj, I must say that you have answered Nirmal without giving the trade secret. So you have done a good job on that.
I'll ask Achita.
We have a question from our colleague Naveen Ajmera. Naveenji, if you are there, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi Pankaj. It was a good insight on the other side of where we're sitting here. because here Dubai Health Authority and the health department overall in UAE has done digitization long back. And I'm into data analytics, so I've seen some of their, inside dashboards and the way they use data. So as you said, it is a big opportunity, but at the same time, considering how diversified and lack of infrastructure in terms of like language, one particular point you mentioned, that all the prescription has to be in English, right? That is a bigger challenge in India, what you might have. But yes, certainly digitization is what required in India to have a good database in terms of doing a lot of research development and improving the overall health sector or well-being of people, I would say. So if you want to put more light on this.
Yeah. Look, I'll say that I've been to Dubai, understood the healthcare infrastructure, and we were talking to a chain of clinics over there. And over there also, what they're doing is there's a lot of handwritten prescriptions still going on over there. Then we explored the UK market. The GPs over there are still handwriting. Then we explored Australia, US, and then we realized while there are so-called automations, but those automations are not in full pipeline. They're not integrated 100% to insurance or the state or the private. They have siloed data over there. The national insurance would not share it with the private would not share it over there. Then there are primary healthcare. Tremendous amount of issues going on over there. Then productivity, then other relationship distances between the doctor and patient going up. So complications are there even in the matured market, and nobody has found the best of the healthcare solution to it. There is a great report of 70 pages on Middle East, which I read on how Middle East can really learn from the mistakes of US and the other economies also, and how we can change the whole thing. But again, everybody is struggling on that. Having said that, the economies which are at a handwritten stage right now, right, they have a huge opportunity to look at things very, very differently, because whether it is US or anyone else, the cost of healthcare is going up, and that's going up not only just because of the human behavior. There are a lot of loopholes in the entire digitization, in the entire automation pieces as well. When I say that, we have to be cognizant of the user behavior always. When we got Amazon, Flipkart in India, nobody was buying initially. Very few early takers. It took them almost 8 to 10 years, spent hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars and maybe $1 billion+ just on getting this behavior change. So the behavior change is very costly, very highly resistive. That has to be understood by the government, and that's why government has also not been able to regulate and push it. Today it's not that government has not tried forcing the doctors to type the prescriptions, but those enforcements have not been possible because it's understood that people's behavior is very, very difficult to change. So I think there has to be a different way. I don't know the answers to that, whether the Indian economy kind of economies will jump to a very nice unique healthcare ecosystem, or the kind of US one. But yes, somebody will find the answers over there someday. A lot of data will help on that, of course.
Thank you, Pankaj. So I'll just ask if anybody has any further question, you can flag your hand or let me know. I'll ask we can ask the question to Pankaj. We are also cautious of time. Probably we'll take one last question before we move to the next one. Anybody?
Or else I'll quickly maybe just two more points to pick up. So since please. You guys, this is such a great community.
I just have one question after your 2 points. Yeah.
Sure. So you guys are pretty well connected with the Middle East stuff. So I'm sure a lot of you would be willing to invest. And we have seen a lot of startup market investments going up. Now I'm someone who's not a very high proponent on a lot of stuff, but if you are investing, you should look at the founder or the founding team. That's something very, very critical. The guy should have the domain experience. You should look at if the person has got some prior startup experience. There's a great business model in place which has got the scale. Most of the investments which go into unicorns and which go into high investments are only because of scale. So that's something very, very important for people who are looking at investing in the prominent to-be unicorns. And from your perspective also, where all you can help this entire startup community, which is booming up across the globe, is in their definitely the investment journey, not only by your own stuff, but also from your connects and all. You can provide access to the Indian healthcare startup ecosystem to your companies, to your connects, to your known people who would want to get in there. And I'm sure a lot of startups would want to establish their own presence in Middle East. And what better city would be, or a country would be, to set it up in Dubai. So those are the areas, which I think the August community over here would be able to put in their valuable contribution. And as I can see the certificate, thanks a ton for this amazing thing.
Thank you,
Sheetal, your
Pankaj.
question.
I really appreciate your thoughts on the entire topic, and it's really helpful to all our members to really get all these nitty-gritties about how they move forward in this particular direction. And so thank you very much for accepting our invite. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate.
So now, as we learned about disruption more in detail, next in line is another speaker.
Anurag, can you stop sharing your screen? Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. So next speaker, and I would like to ask our executive committee member, Sheetal Soni, to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Anurag. Just 1 second. Yeah. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce Raman. Raman is a chartered accountant. Raman is a deeply passionate about social transformation delivered through commercially focused approaches, the double bottom line approach. He's an investor, board member, and mentor to startups across geographies with over 20 years of experience in strategic advisory and financial services. As a partner at McKinsey, Raman led the firm's financial services practice in MENA and advised several clients across Middle East, Africa, Europe, India, and Asia. Moreover, he is a visiting faculty at senior leadership forums such as GCC Board Directors Institute and McKinsey Leadership. Raman will discuss today about top 10 key trends disrupting education sector globally and how he feels the common factor in all trends is digitization. Please join me in welcoming CA Raman.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Fantastic. First of all, good evening to everybody, and it's a real pleasure and honor to be here for a couple of reasons. One, I think because this is the first time I've had the chance to engage with the vibrant CA community in the UAE. So I find that a great privilege.
We want you to be the member as well, right? You have to take the membership and pay the membership fee.
Absolutely. As in fact, the first time I saw on the notice, I've been addressed as CA Raman Tyagarajan. My father will be very happy because he's also a chartered accountant. I started my career as a CA and, of course, then spent a lot of time. I've now spent 25 years outside India, most of it in banking and most of that with McKinsey and Company. So about 5 years ago, I left to become an entrepreneur, more a social entrepreneur. So we've set up a venture in out of UAE. It's called Next Square. And Next Square is a data science company in education. Our mission is to build tech and data products focused on enabling the transformation of the education sector, not just for the privileged institutions in UAE and Saudi and GCC, but really for the vast majority of the world that otherwise might not have access to these advanced technology products. So today we are present in about 10 countries and more than about 400 institutions are using our platforms today. So what I thought today, if it is helpful, is I won't talk about our company much or about our products much, more talk about this topic of education. So I'm not an educator by professional background, but it's a profession that I've adopted and I'm deeply passionate about it. So I thought I could talk a little bit about the sector and a bit about why I believe digitization is going to disrupt this sector. So there are a couple of pages I've put together. I thought might be more interesting for all of you to see that than just see me. So can I share my screen, Sheetal?
Yeah, sure. You can just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me just give me a second. And please do feel free to stop me at any time. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer. So as Sheetal said, we'll try and focus on the 10 trends that I believe will transform education. We'll talk more broadly about the sector across geographies, but most of it is also relevant for the GCC. I've spent 15 years in this region, and I think most of it is primarily driven through digitization and technology. So let me skip through these. So to start with, I think first, education is a huge industry. If you look at all the spend, you look at the spend, including private education, K-12, higher ed, online learning, as well as learning in upskilling, it is going to be something like a $10 trillion industry by 2030, and already is close to a $6 trillion industry. When we think of private education, which might be more relevant in the sort of conversation we're having right now, that in itself is a $1.5 trillion industry. And if you look at Middle East and Africa, this in itself contributes, of course, US, as you can see, or Americas, as you can see, take the lion's share of the spend. But still, Middle East and Africa by themselves are not insignificant. And if you look at K-12 in particular, this is also quite significant. GCC's spend in K-12 private sector education is expected to be about $26 billion in the next 3 years. So the spend is quite significant, but less than 3% of this expenditure is actually on technology. Right? And when you look at education more broadly, and this is a study done by McKinsey, this article was published in a few years ago. But when you look at all the different industries and looked at how they have adopted digitization, education was amongst the bottom few, right? And this trend has not fundamentally changed. So if you see even post-COVID, IT, media, financial services, a lot of them, maybe retail has done slightly better because retail has moved up as well. A lot of them have digitized far faster, but the starting point, was that education actually was lagging behind. Now, COVID gave a jolt. I think all of you understand this very well in different capacities, most importantly as a parent. And everyone had to react, right, with very little time. So what changed in the ecosystem? A few things did, right? And these are, I'm not going to walk through all of these points. We saw some seismic shifts in attitudes. And attitudes is a key phrase here because it is not that people did not understand digitization. It is not that people did not appreciate the need for digitization, but actually I think in Sasha's discussion we were talking about behavior change, right? The behavior change was always postponed. It was always felt as something we can do next year or later, but COVID made it happen at that moment. So schools started thinking about how to do it and run in different shifts. The teaching versus learning debate. Are you really learning? Are you teaching? Schools and teachers struggled to go online. The whole notion of community and why school as a community is important became even more important because whilst you could do online learning, the notion of still belonging to a community was sort of people were still struggling to figure out how to address those, right? There were many other side effects. For example, many kids who otherwise were not actively participating were starting to feel that they were socially distant. And so there were other, if you will, second order effects that also started cropping up and needed attention. So when I reflect on this and I think more broadly about the sector, I think there are 10 trends. There is no going back, that is for sure. Now, what this new normal is going to look like, we don't know. This is not the first time the world has had a new normal conversation. So what this new normal is going to look like, we don't know. But we think there are 10 trends that are going to fundamentally change the sector. First is, I believe digital spend is going to explode. Right? wherever the spend was, and maybe in the GCC, the spend in different countries is slightly different. But if you look at the global average, 3.6% was spent in digital. That is going to go above 5% in the next few years. Now, what is the long-term nature of the spend? What are the models that are going to require this money? How will the infrastructure in education evolve? Some of these questions are yet to play out. But the fact that digitization and digital spend is going to explode, there is no doubt about that. And we will all figure out what these long-term models are going to be. Second thing we've all figured out is that blended learning is here to stay. And this is across the world, including in countries where our products are present in. So for example, GCC, of course, and UAE, of course, is far more advanced in terms of digitization and access to technology and usage of technology. But in markets, for example, like Ghana, which are really at the frontier, we are talking to some donor-enabled schools there. Even there, parents are sort of adopting digital education, whether they are using Google Classroom or whether they are using Zoom or whether they are using Teams. They all are figuring out how to move to a digital format. The left-hand side of the graph just says that this is research conducted by Edweek. It says that most teachers, their attitude towards technology post-COVID has improved. And the right-hand side, what it says is that every school has tried some format of blended learning, whether they did all of it online, some printouts, active attention to students, less attention to students, but they've tried different formats. So we know for sure that this is going to stay. We're also beginning to find that learning outside the classroom is only going to get bigger, right? So if you look on the left-hand side, what the graph says is these are the total number of education app downloads during COVID, right? And you would see that these are the levels of increase versus before on a weekly average. So globally, every single country, when you look at it, the number of downloads of some sort of education app is gone through the roof. And the right-hand side, most of these names all of us are familiar with. There is hence also a market response. Of course, most of these players existed before COVID, but there's also a market response to fulfilling or filling that gap. And many of these players, whether it is tutoring or online content or tech learning or whatever it may be, have also seen a significant growth.
Raman, would you like to take some questions in between?
Please, of course. Yeah. Please shoot any.
Sasha, I see your hand flagged, so please go ahead.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that it's still up, but I think I think Raman has already answered the question, but I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that because I actually find it very interesting. How do you see, for instance, and I think in India in particular, it is a very prominent challenge is to give access to remote areas. I mean, you've mentioned Ghana already, and but from what I've heard is you're very active in the UAE, GCC, and so forth and so forth. But I think it is also from a CSR perspective a very interesting opportunity to offer that exactly to remote areas. What are your thought process for that?
Absolutely, Sasha. Thank you. It's a great question. And today, amongst the countries we serve, actually in the GCC, we're present only in the UAE. Most of the countries are across Africa, Pakistan, India, and Asia. And in any country, you would see, for example, if you take Ghana, you take places like Tanzania or northern Pakistan or remote areas in India. The beauty is that the timing sort of digitization across the board has grown significantly. Mobile adoption is fairly strong. In fact, this whole generation is going to skip the whole laptop, right? People are not going to know what is a PC and what is a laptop in this coming generation. All of them are going to skip and go directly to mobile. So mobile first becomes very important. And I think the whole notion of, learning that is more social learning. So I don't learn just by myself, but I learn with others. And this notion that learning is not only going to happen in a classroom, but I learn all the time. I learn outside. I learn when I'm interacting in other places. So learning in itself, what is learning? That definition is also changing. So specifically to a question of what is going to happen in remote areas, I think mobile availability, the significant reduction in data costs, we see that in India, but you see that around the world, right? As well as this COVID-driven catalyst that now you have to push towards going online is becoming very key. And to your last point of CSR, absolutely. This is a very, very important element where companies and large institutions can devote budgets towards actually driving change and to actually being able to monitor that. So MasterCard Foundation is doing a lot and people like that.
But Raman, one more thing that I want to ask you, essentially when we talk about all this digitization and we talk about going mobile, I essentially see that, people have no habit of writing. There is no writing actually left over. So basically the ink companies and the pen companies are going to be bankrupt, I believe, with the technology. There's nothing. I mean, laptop has a pen, the mobile note has a pen, all the things are on the app itself. So basically the companies which is selling the pencils and pen, they're going to be bankrupt. And the bookkeeping companies, the companies which produce all the books, going to be evaporated. Like, you have library behind you almost. So I think I tend to see that, these companies going to evaporate over a period of time as education go completely digital. What's you say on that?
So Anurag, I think that is true. And there is no looking back on that, right? So if you look, not just, so interestingly, that's why Apple has launched Apple Pencil, right? They are monetizing exactly on that. They are trying to drive this notion of writing and annotating using a pencil on their iPad, right? And others are doing the same. But more fundamentally, I think digitization and habits will change, right? Yes, I have a library and these books are being read, but I doubt most people are going to do that. They might read it on a Kindle, they might listen to audiobooks. But digitization, if you also think of the Fortune 500, 10 years ago versus today, nearly a third of those companies have disappeared because of digitization.
But one thing, I mean, I completely understand and buy this entire idea, but essentially the learning is not the same. I mean,
it could be better.
The people, they don't write. So basically their memory power is very short. They don't write. They just see on the screen and move on. So essentially the people having a side effect of the learning as well, like how their memory power is going to be weaker and weaker and weaker over a period of time. That's some other way around thoughts are there. I'm not sure. I'm not very much into education. So people differently looking into education, like, people like Nirmal, who's looking into a lot of education. Rajiv is there also, is getting into this. So people who get into the education day in, day out basis can really talk about that, how this trend is impacting. Rajiv, what's your view on this? Please unmute yourself, say something. I mean, whatever you want to add to this. Okay, he's saying something.
Thanks, Anurag. I think the challenge which we heard from Pankaj and the challenge which Raman is saying is going to disrupt each other. So Raman said doctors have a habit of writing. They don't have a keen skills. So the moment this generation or this technology is moving in, I think we are taking out the writing. So tomorrow's doctor will not be able to write. So Pankaj thought process may go into a very different direction or same direction. So I think there are a lot of plus minus which comes into education industry, which we talk about. To be honest, right now, the engagement has gone into a very different level. So initially you used to engage with personally when you take sessions, either you talk about professionals or you talk about a typical students. So that has gone into a very different level. Now when you go into the e-learning, you have either the videos which are connected, and that too, there are benefits, there are drawbacks. So both are there. We are losing the human element, yes. But in the meantime, I think we are increasing some kind of a faster paced learning also, which is economical and reaching to the vast audience. So I think everything has every step we take will definitely, if we take 10 steps forward, definitely we are taking one step backward somewhere. So I think that's where the technology and adoption will change. And as Raman's clearly articulated that the screen which shows that Byju's or Vedantu and or the so many other technology companies which are coming up, it's changing the game of education. On a positive note, if you see, initially you used to only teach maybe 50 or maybe 100 students at a time. Now 1 million can be a number anytime. So it's moving. Definitely have a lot of positives. Yeah, back to you, Raman.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And maybe I'll just have one or two reactions to those. Sorry, go ahead, Sheetal.
No, you please go ahead, because I see number of hands raised now. You will be, you'll have, if you want to make your point, you make your point, and then we take it at the later end of it, up to you.
Sure. So maybe I'll just respond to this, and I won't spend too much time on the slides. Let me just flick through the 10 trends, and then it might be easier to take questions at the end.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So to the points that were raised, I think absolutely true. Maybe three reactions. One, I think digitization can be a great equalizer. Exactly to the point you said, everyone need not go to the top universities and the top schools if they can't afford it, right? Through a mix of methods of learning, this could be available to all. The best teachers could teach, almost anybody. Second thing, I do think there's a linkage of writing and learning, but perhaps in this next generation, they're going to do it differently. They might be even faster, because gamification will trigger the way of learning maybe differently. And third thing I would, I would say is that, how you teach in the school and the class may also change, right? So now you don't need to spend time in the class talking to your students. That listening and watching can be done offline. And when you're in the class, you actually could spend it on engaging with them, on solving doubts or project-based approaches and things like that. So I think there are different views on this, and all of those I think could, of course, there are pros and cons, and it could be a couple of steps back, but I broadly believe there are more steps forward. Yeah. So maybe in the interest of time, let me quickly cover the rest. Parental involvement is going to be more. We all saw that in COVID. It's going to continue. Teacher upskilling becomes even more critical. It always was an issue before, but now post-COVID, teachers not only have got to relearn things they didn't know or learn new skills, they also have to adapt and learn and to teach and engage in a very different way. And that requires not traditional professional development, but much more modern, self-paced, personalized, development. Schools have to modernize, and by modernize, I know everyone has moved to Zoom and virtual classroom, and that's been one big apparent shift everyone have done. But schools, the brick and mortar schools, and I'm not talking of the top 3 to 5% in the world that already are well-to-do. I'm talking of the 60, 70% below those, have to modernize. That means every single process I run has to run like a bank, like a healthcare, industry, or like in other sectors. They have to run in a manner from application to behavior management to classroom management. All of this has to be on the cloud. There's no way of doing this manually. I'd say data intelligence is really the key, right? Now, a lot of talk on AI, but I think in education, AI perhaps is a bit further out. There's a lot of hype. So the use case here of Deakin University and IBM Watson, in Australia, they did a joint program where they saw that a Watson virtual advisor was able to take over the role of actual advisors and handle basic questions. So things like chatbots, personalized learning, adaptive learning, all of these are going to be applications. But beyond that, I don't think the schools per se are going to disappear, or teachers per se are going to disappear, right? These all are only going to be enablers. Policy making also has to change. We spoke about in the beginning, how budget and how the governments are now looking towards education differently. So here, for example, in the UAE, like UAE does many things in a very forward-looking way. So here we had the privilege of working with a large council here, which has 6 sitting ministers on it. They were trying to see how can they improve employability. And rather than going in a traditional approach, what they've done is they've taken a data-centric approach. So we work with them to build a big data capability where we mapped every child from kindergarten to their first job. We handle close to 1 billion data points today from 5 government agencies. We run machine learning and AI models on them. And it allows the government to, if you will, simulate policy action before actually implementing them. Next point I'd say is a lot of enabling infrastructure has to come, right? So whilst all this can happen, in the surrounding environment, infrastructure also has to grow. So things around payments, things around financing, availability of credit, people being able to move one rung up, going to be able to go to universities, first time, people who are first time attending universities and things like that. And here also, what you see here is an example of a product we've launched, which we've launched recently in the UAE, has got very good response around the whole digitization of education payments. And lastly, the banker in me will say that, capital has to find its way into education. It's an interesting chart and fits well to the healthcare conversation we had. The three graphs you'll see on the left-hand side, the first two in red say the total global GDP and the total global market cap, and you see the proportion. Next two show you the healthcare market and the healthcare market cap. It shows you a proportion. But when you look at education, total global education spend, and you look at the market cap of publicly listed companies globally, it is very small. So for innovation to happen, there has to be capital. I believe that it will flow. But more importantly, I also am of the view that existing business models will come under pressure. People will start asking questions. Why do you need to pay so much to go to school? Is really a degree in Harvard worth it? And all of these questions will come up. So traditional business models under pressure. And lastly, I feel that as capital flows in, you will also see, like Pankaj was talking about healthcare, you will also see more and more successful players. So there are 19 unicorns in January. The expectation is that there'll be 100 plus by 2025. So I'll stop with that. And sort of the view is that the whole digital shift is the underlying theme, which will hopefully take education to a much better place, not only for the privileged few, but really for the vast majority of the world that is otherwise underserved.
Raman, thank you very much. These are very, very interesting trends that you mentioned. There are a number of hands flagged already, waiting for you to answer some of their questions. But before that, I'll ask about one question. You talked about on the trend number 7, the government, and agencies using the data. And so can you throw some light on how they can use the data and how they can benefit out of it, or even misuse for that matter?
Absolutely, Sheetal. I think, again, a very key question. Everyone talks about, the need for big data and AI. And if you think of analytics, I'd say there are multiple stages, and all of you may know this. The first thing is really descriptive analytics, right? Do I know what is happening? Only if I know what is happening, can I then figure how to solve and how to automate it and for it to become, prescriptive. So UAE example that I spoke about was one of the cases where, to a very simple question of how do we improve employability and how do we drive education policies, the government here said, listen, rather than taking a traditional view of benchmarking against European countries or other countries who have done in a different way and using that benchmark as a method to run a policy, they said, why don't we look at our own data? Why don't we look at all the data we have, put it together, start building a data repository, a data intelligence capability, and then any policy you're going to run, why not simulate it in that environment and figure out what are possible outcomes before you actually implement policy. So I think governments have to start thinking in this direction, where it is not just about what has worked in the past or what they believe or one person believes because they're an expert is going to work in the future. It is really about understanding in a data-driven way what can work.
Wonderful. Thank you for this. Shall I ask Mr. Vivek to ask this question? Vivek, can you please go ahead? You have to unmute yourself. Vivek Batra.
Yeah,
before that, Raman, you may want to remove your slides.
Sure.
Yes. Good evening, Raman. This is an excellent presentation, and the fact you explained such as any brief overview of what's the trends. I have a different set of question in terms of if you look at the holistic view of what the current state of education is, whether in India or in UAE, for example. What we're saying is that, do you think that private school education in India as well as in Dubai is still quite expensive but at the same time, there's also a concern, the challenges regarding the quality of talent which is available to teach, in terms of quality of teachers and the shortage of teachers. These challenges are always existing even prior to the COVID situation happened. With this, do you think is going to be exacerbated, or you need? So, what educational institutions need to do or do you think there'll be a more flexible, environment created for teachers where they can upskill themselves, but at the same time have more avenues? So, say either they increase the source of income, unless you have a right amount of financial reward for the teachers and recognition and so forth. These are the very important challenges which is being faced by both, even in India as well as in Dubai, for example. So what do you think about that in terms of how that challenge can be met or will be met in the future?
Thank you, Vivek. I think very pertinent, because if you don't solve the teacher side of the issue, digitization in itself is not going to achieve the outcome. But digitization can also solve some of the teacher issues. So there are many things there from what we have experienced. You need to make education or becoming a teacher an attractive profession. Financial incentives have to align. You need to have a method for them to professionally grow, like you see in other industries. There must be an open market for them to seek, and when they look at a 10-year journey of joining the sector, it must be exciting. So there are many things there, and one of the platforms we've launched is around how can you give a teacher the control to improve and manage their own professional development. But I think more broadly, there is a huge teaching as a profession will be needed, far more than before. Shortage just in Africa, I think, is 1 million teachers over the next decade. So where technology can help, in my view, of where there will be a dramatic shift is data and tech can help the teacher, one, of course, to upgrade themselves, but also to become more effective in what they do. So some of the analytics that are out of the box can help a teacher understand what is happening in my class, which student needs focus where, right? And so they can then spend more time in a slightly more personalized way. Also, a lot of tools that are available today in terms of AR, VR, or other sort of technologies that are available, schools can promote these to supplement what a teacher does and reduce the burden on a teacher. I think these are, of course, many different things, but I think together they will, I believe, make a substantial change.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. Pankaj, you can unmute yourself. Pankaj, please go ahead.
Sure. No, Raman, very interesting presentation. Thanks for that. So, from a healthcare perspective, we did, and this is just not a question, but more of a reaction. We did an advisory board, and we called 2 sets of doctors. There were half of them were handwriting their prescriptions for ages. They have not shifted to any kind of typing-based solutions. And then the other set was guys who were typing the solutions. They were using some symptom checkers, decision support systems and all, and pretty tech savvy. One very interesting observation, during the discussion came up was those who were using those typing-based solutions, they were able to remember and recall only maybe half of the medications what the guy who was writing, which is quite dangerous. And those doctors were like so heavily dependent on their tabs and laptops. The moment it was not there, they would just not be able to, they'll just not be able to, work out. So that was very interesting. So digital plays a lot, but again, very carefully where all, and definitely it can be used in many areas and places. That was something which we observed.
Very interesting, Pankaj, and I think this also plays back to Anurag's point about memory capacity issue, right? And that is true. Today, everyone uses Google Map. Without that, you figure out, it's hard for you to go from place A to place B, which earlier you would do it almost on a self-drive mode, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, I think, and I think there are what you had spoken about in terms of, digitizing or creating a new way of recording an old practice. I think a lot of those could also apply to education, because a lot of the marking assessments that teachers were doing, or how students were writing exam papers, a lot of those insights are also relevant for education.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nirmal, please go ahead with your question, please. Nirmal.
Hi. Hi, Raman. Nirmal here. Hi. Thank you for the nice presentation, Raman. My question is slightly on the, I mean, essentially because I spend a lot of time on brick and mortar schools actually, and now, with we seeing all of these things coming in, and everyone is kind of trying to kind of get into the digital mode within their setups as well. In limited perspective, when we look at UAE, okay, you have huge capacities which has been built up on the brick and mortar side actually. And the way we see trend going forward, more of a blended, let's say, the schools are going to be more of a facilitator. A lot of things are going to happen through a flip classroom mode, or, a lot of learning is going to happen online. What do you see as, with some of these businesses, which is, kind of set up with a huge infrastructure, what will happen to them? Let's say if we were to look at a long term, 10 years down the line, and how you see the school of future actually.
Very interesting, Nirmal. And I can share a perspective, though I do not know. We'll all have to wait and see how that plays out.
Yeah.
My sense would be that, see, this huge capex-led plays will no longer be relevant. I would see that successful school. So first, brick and mortar infrastructure and schools in the way they are today, will they exist? Absolutely. At least for the next 20, 30 years, I don't see them disappearing. How they exist is going to change in my view. So one aspect will be huge capex-led approaches will no longer be viable. So you'll have to be light and nimble. Schools will have to be, like you said, blended in how they approach it. So there's going to be a lot of supplementation with non-traditional approaches of digital content and tutors and all of those that will help the child. A lot of emphasis is going to be on how the school adds value. So the teacher's role and the whole infrastructure that school provides beyond the teacher, how can they add value? I think this is where a lot of emphasis is going to be. But I equally see and there's a lot of discussion in different parts of the world, at least with many of the companies who are raising money, where I have conversations with them. There's a lot of interest in pure online schools, because the question is, if you run a fantastic school anywhere in the world, why can you not extend that and run that to a
cloud platform,
larger audience at a much lower price point and create much better,
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think, see, in higher education, that's, we've been seeing that's successfully been running with the Udemy, Coursera, edX, and all of these. But just on when I look at more on a primary school, I don't know where the social element will come in future. So, obviously the school, I also agree that it'll remain for some point in time, actually, at least for next 20, 30 years. I think become probably more of a hub to do the, social skill development versus the academic learning, actually. I don't know, that's what, I probably...
Possible, but I also think level of accountability is going to be much higher, because there's going to be far more visibility. See, primary education cannot happen online. It has to happen in brick and mortar. You have to learn social skills. You have to be with the teacher. But then the whole accountability of what happens in the class, what is the kid doing? Are they really learning? The whole transparency around, and there are tons of apps around us today, right? I think just the onus and the transparency on a school to be able to be accountable and to be able to demonstrate how they add value is going to be the differentiator.
Interesting.
Thank you, Nirmal. I think most of the time we end up with a similar answer. It will coexist. Yeah. So I'll request Naveen Ajmera. I'm cautious of time as well, but we'll take 2 more questions and then we'll close the session. So Naveen ji, can you please go ahead with your question?
Yeah. Hi, Raman. It was interesting presentation, and what I like most, out of 10 slides, 7 slides have chart and visual in that, which is very good. Data guys. My question is, I used to do a lot of training session in person pre-COVID. But post-COVID, I did online session as well. And I find, it is amusing that most of the professionals, after when I get the feedback on online session, it is not that effective as it used to be in person. In fact, I got few people who does online courses, Udemy and all that, and they come back to me and say, when you are doing in person. So is it something to do with the, like earlier session, we were talking about the behavior change? Is it something to do with that? We are too resilient to, move from one to another way of learning. And at the same time, like I see a, less session by ICI even in Dubai, as far as training is concerned. When it was normal, there were a lot of training and learning session, but this year it was relatively less. I'm talking about training.
The second question, I will request my esteemed colleagues to answer.
That's why I put Rajiv on the spotlight as well. Okay.
But yeah, jokes aside, I think that's true, Naveen. And my view on this would be that it is not the format of training, it is more the type of skill, right? Certain skills are better learned remotely. Technical skills are better learned remotely. But skills that require where there is an element of mentoring, coaching, or observation, or anything that requires a human around human behavior leadership, I think here it is more difficult to do it online because you're not able to observe and pay attention in the same way you would be able to do it in person. So I would say some things will be more successful online and some will be less, and the differentiator would be the type of skill.
No, but give you just an example that for university student, I did the same learning course, which I do for the professional, and you feel, you see the complete difference. Whereas that particular audience, young audience, are very receptive to those online learning. On the other side, it is completely different story.
No, that is very true. I think that point is spot on. I just think, my generation, and I think the generations now, completely different. How they're going to learn and how their world is going to evolve and how they're going to engage, interact is going to be fundamentally different from the past.
Thank you. Thank you, Raman.
Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you, Naveenji. We'll take the last question if you don't mind, Rajiv, and then you do the vote of thanks after that. So, Michael Steven, please go ahead and ask your question, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Raman, for a very insightful presentation. You mentioned about digital potentially being a great equalizer. Now, given the two ends of the spectrum, if you take India as an example, the people paying between 6,000 to 12,000 rupees per annum, vis-a-vis 6 lakh to 12 lakh rupees per annum. Is there a case study at the lower end of the spectrum on how digital is impacting education? Number one, and number two is there something? What is it that can be done to support schools at that end of the spectrum?
Thank you, Michael. That's a question very close to my heart. See, I think the challenge here is sometimes, and that's the challenge with pure capitalism, right? A lot of innovation will not happen till capital sort of finds its path to it, right? So if you look at the bottom end of the spectrum, it is not that their needs are very different. Perhaps the calibration of the sophistication is different. So they might not need everything that a school at the other end of the spectrum or a learner at the other end of the spectrum needs, but they still need some of it. Now, to be able to deliver that in a commercially viable model is the sort of challenge, right? Today it is done with a lot of social grants and a lot of government support, and somehow if their sustainability is unclear, right? So for it to be sustainable and for it to be, because even a player at the lower end of the spectrum, if they are paying 10,000 rupees fees, and even if you charge them 10 rupees a month, it is still 10 rupees or 20 rupees or 50 rupees, right? So your product has to be strong enough that they are going to be able to pay for it, or they're going to be willing to pay for it. And if they're willing to pay for it, your economic model has to be viable enough that you're going to be sustainable. And that is where the challenge is. And one approach, I think, to solving this is that capital, this is where the double bottom line comes into play, that capital, particularly CSR-led capital, has to come that can seek a return. So it is not a grant, it can seek a return, but also is patient and also looks at returns on the social side.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raman. Anurag, please take over.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Raman, for your insightful details about it. And I believe, this is one of the good sessions that I really appreciate. The reason is the kind of insight that we're talking about, the trend that we are really discussing about. I believe this is commendable, and the way we are approaching the future with a change. I mean, it's very difficult to adopt that change. I mean, I see it with my kids. It's really difficult to adopt that change. But yet that's reality. So I would like to thank you on behalf of the entire ICI Managing Committee and our members for sharing your knowledgeable insight. So this is a certificate of appreciation from all of us.
Thank you very much. It's my privilege and my real pleasure, as I said, to actually be associated with the institute here locally with the institute after a very long time, and with Dubai for the first time. Really my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all
please stay along.
Listening.
Yeah, please stay along for formal vote of thanks, and we want you to be a member, paid member as well.
One thing I must say that our fraternity is very strong. The kind of work that we are doing is really, really helping our members today. I mean, the kind of feedback that we receive. So everybody, all the chartered accountants are encouraged. I mean, anybody who should encourage them to join our chapter. And see, knowledge, the kind of knowledge that you possess can really help a lot of members. Like today, if you see that how many members that we meet together, the kind of network, kind of knowledge that you shared, it's really helpful. So joining the chapter is one of the greatest things. Thank you very much. I look forward to your membership.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind.
Thank you so much.
So, Anurag.
Yes.
For the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Now I would like to ask our executive committee member, Sri Rajiv Hira, to do the vote of thanks, please.
Thanks, Anurag. I think one thing which I need to tell everyone, this chapter is already a unicorn. So the zeros which we bring up as together is amazing. One thing just maybe to add up as a closing comment, which came from Naveen and Raman also, and even Nirmal also very well stated, what schools will do. My wild guess, again, as everyone is guessing, I am just putting up, school is becoming a pull factor than a push factor. You cannot teach something which someone does not want to receive it. So what's happening, if you teach a subject which is interesting, you will find amazing outcome, amazing output on that. We have seen that in our own chapters. When you talk about some new trend, like a taxation suddenly changed, and then everyone is so curious to know about the topic. But if you bring up something which is not too engaging, not too interesting, it's very difficult to feed them. So that's how education system is changing. And I'm very sure further, like schools have to have a cafeteria and a social network to make it social, because that's the most important thing which is missing between the kids. They're getting education, but they're not getting socially connected. So they feel emotionally out, so they need to come back to the system. So I think those are the most important things. It's an amazing session. I think the combination was very good. Shiku, great for organizing. And thank you to the chairman for bringing up the thoughts and everyone from the ExCom to just bring up the stories in the right way. As we said, we are a unicorn, so we need to recognize people who help us to get the great speakers. I would like to thank Mr. Devendra Sanghvi for inviting Mr. Pankaj and helping us get Pankaj on board. Thanks, Pankaj, for amazing session and giving your perspectives. And Nirmal Shah, so now we know that why you were also quite engaged, because you helped us to get Raman here. Our own member, but it's good to get connected. I think that's a game. Any technology, any operations, anything which you talk about, unless we don't connect each other, I don't think anyone will be gaining out of it. So a great thanks to everyone and all the members to connect it out. We can't stop the event by definitely recognizing and thanking our sponsors, the Danube Group, who Tally, Shura, and Lulu, who are the principal sponsors. We have our platinum sponsor, which is Century, Christian Menon, MMJS, IFCO, AGMC, CRIF, and Clyde & Co. These all are services which we day in and day out take, and we need to recognize them for helping us to bring up a large audience. And definitely we have a media partner, which is College Times, Indian High School as an institutional partner, and banking partner, Bank of Baroda. Thank you very much. It was an amazing session, and I can't say enough thank you to the speakers. So where Sasha has brought up a very different perspective on how the healthcare can work in, and Pankaj gave a very different perspective on the digitization or the technology. We can change the letters into the digital format, and Raman bringing up a good perspective on the education. Thank you very much. Wish you a great evening and looking forward for a new week to start from tomorrow for UAE part. And for India, enjoy one more weekend.
Thank you everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you everybody. Thanks a lot. We will probably have another session, maybe a networking session purely on healthcare and education very soon. So look forward meeting you, and then I'll let you know in advance, when we do that. So I appreciate everybody participating, contributing to this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. And I think this is a great session. Thank you very much for participating this evening on the weekend. I wish you each and every one a great week forward. Stay safe, stay healthy. All the numbers are increasing, but we are continue to bring together our second drive for the second dose in upcoming weeks. So I wish you all, everybody, staying safe, and just continue to rock wherever you are, whatever the work you're doing. Continue to smile, continue to work forward, and we're gonna bring something more forward again in upcoming weeks. Something definitely better.
We are looking for one more digital vaccination drive. So where
you can all say anything now. We have unmuted everybody, so please, you can say hello to everybody.
You guys, man, you are doing wonderful.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank
you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Pankaj, Raman. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Vijayji. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you. I want to pay fees, but you're not taking.
Sir, we are always welcoming the fee. We cannot not say that. Our treasurer is here. I'll make sure that he issues the invoice right away.
I'll contact Vijayji. I'm going to contact you now. Don't worry.
Sure. Send me details, bank details.
Hariji, you need to send him the payment link. Okay. And if he delays, penalty as well.
No, digital payment.